All right, so today we're going to dive deep into a region that's right in the middle of this massive, profound change. And we're going to do it by looking through the lens of some brand new academic research coming out of Nepal. We'll explore this really delicate dance between tradition and technology, and look at the social fault lines that start to appear when a society moves this fast. The source material itself gives us a really powerful way to picture this journey. And this quote right here, it perfectly frames what we're talking about. I mean, just imagine that for a second. Living in a world that is literally a bridge being built while you're walking across it. It's such a powerful image, right? It speaks to progress and promise, sure, but also to this feeling of instability and risk. It just captures that feeling of living through a huge transition where you can't quite see the other side yet. So our guide for all of this is the latest volume of the academic journal Exploration Anveshan from Far Western University in Nepal. And what's so great about it is that it brings together all this different research from education, literature, management, social science, which gives us this amazing multifaceted way of understanding this really complex, evolving landscape. Okay, so every bridge has to start somewhere, right? It has to be anchored to the ground. So let's begin by looking at one side of the riverbank, at these foundational cultural and educational systems that are still providing so much crucial support today. You can think of these as the old, sturdy planks people are still walking on. In an age where we all just assume everything is digital, this is such a crucial reality check. A study by Ramesh Sound confirms that in many parts of Nepal, the good old-fashioned physical textbook is still king. Because there's a scarcity of other resources, it's the one reliable, if maybe a little inflexible, bedrock of the whole education system. It's a huge reminder that progress doesn't happen everywhere at the same time. And this foundation, it goes so much deeper than just tools for school. It's about a whole worldview. Research by Shiva Prasad Milley looks into the missing community's philosophy of the Dani Polo cosmos. And the core idea is that the sun and the moon are ancestral witnesses. Just think about that. It means every single action is seen and judged, which creates this powerful living moral compass that ties human behavior directly to taking care of the environment. This is a brilliant illustration of how the old and new don't always have to be in conflict. Shiv Sharan Chaudhary's research on the Dengora Tharo community found this hybrid birthing culture. You've got traditional healers and midwives working hand in hand with modern hospitals. And what this does is it allows the community to hold on to its deep spiritual identity while getting access to all the life-saving benefits of modern medicine. It's a perfect example of adaptation, not replacement. So now let's actually step out onto the bridge itself. As these new digital cables are being strung up over those traditional foundations, we start to see this structure emerge that's, well, it's full of incredible promise, but it's also loaded with tension and instability. And here's the first huge conflict you see. A study by Arjun Jung Rayamaji shows the massive potential of AI tools like ChatGPT to create these amazing, personalized learning experiences for students. But here's the peril. Here's where that promise just hits a brick wall. A quarter of government schools in Nepal don't even have internet. That digital divide is so real. And this tension, it's a theme that just keeps coming up. Pitamber Pol's research shows how innovative models like the flipped classroom can be absolutely fantastic for giving students more autonomy. But the paradox is that this empowerment comes at a huge cost, a massive increase in workload for teachers, who are now suddenly expected to be digital content creators, often with little to no support. So the crucial thing here is that even when teachers take the initiative themselves, they hit these roadblocks. Mahesh Singh Saud's study found that teachers are incredibly proactive. They're out there seeking online workshops for their own professional development. But that incredible drive is constantly getting stalled by the exact same systemic problems: terrible internet and a lack of real support from school administration. A bridge that's still under construction is not a smooth path. There are these dangerous gaps, these systemic inequities and social challenges that people have to figure out how to navigate every single day. So let's take a look at what the research tells us about these gaps. This is a huge question right now, a major gap in the country's future. A study by Gambhir Bahadur Chand and Rajendra Prasad Joshi decided to investigate this so-called brain drain by going right to the source, the teachers. And the answer they found? Well, it was crystal clear. There are two main forces pulling young people away from local colleges. First, the really powerful lure of getting an education abroad, and second, just as important, this feeling that there aren't enough secure, meaningful jobs back home. These gaps aren't just economic either. They are woven deep into the social fabric. Law Sinkarki's study shows the profound challenge for women with disabilities trying to get health care. And it's not just one single barrier, it's this overlapping crisis. They have to deal with cultural prejudice and physical barriers, like buildings they can't even get into. One problem just makes the other one worse. This quote from Saroj Pokharel's work just perfectly captures another one of these deep social gaps. Ethnographic research in Kathmandu found this paradox. Culturally, society holds its elders in very high regard, but in practice, they're often only valued socially if they have financial capital, like a pension. So there's this massive disconnect between the respect they're shown and the real-world support they get. Now, to understand the roots of some of these social gaps, we've got to look back even further. And one way to do that is with what's called a post-colonial lens. All that really means is looking at our foundational stories and asking, how did this narrative shape the power dynamics between different groups of people, often in ways that actually justified colonialism? So, let's apply that lens to something we all know. Bhupadraj Joshi's analysis of the novel Robinson Crusoe argues that it's not just some simple adventure story. He shows how it actually acts as a vehicle for colonial myths, creating a narrative that systematically silences and devalues the indigenous character Friday. Stories like this help build the very social hierarchies that turn into these huge gaps centuries later. Okay, so given all these challenges, this precarious structure, the digital tensions, the social gaps, how do you actually finish the bridge? Let's shift our focus to the future and look at what the research suggests we need to build a stronger, more inclusive blueprint. For education, the path forward seems pretty clear. When you pull together the findings from several of these studies, you get a really actionable plan. First, use strategies that actually activate students and make them participants, not just passive listeners. Second, create structured ways for teachers to collaborate and support each other's growth. And third, provide real, formal training on any new systems to reduce the burden on teachers. A stronger bridge also needs a much more stable economic foundation. Mayaram Katiwada's research shows the power of the circular economy in action. It's amazing. By simply tracking their resources more carefully, small businesses in Dangadi are finding ways to turn waste into value, creating a more resilient and sustainable local economy, literally from the ground up. So if you tie everything we've looked at together, the one critical point that emerges is this: one-size-fits-all solutions just will not work. It doesn't matter if you're talking about AI in the classroom, healthcare for marginalized groups, or support for the elderly. The single most important takeaway is the need for inclusive policies that are really sensitive to the local context. And that leaves us with one last, really critical question. This metaphor of the bridge is incredibly powerful, but it forces us to ask, who gets to be the architect? Who decides which materials to use, which gaps to close first, and who is guaranteed a safe passage to the other side? The answer to that question, well, that's what will ultimately determine what kind of future is being built, not just here, but everywhere.